correct seating position is really important. It's often overlooked and often forgotten about after you've done your first couple of lessons. People seem to care very little about being in the correct spot. This might help if you're learning, but it also might give you a little reminder if you've been past a few years. I hope it helps. Okay, so we've just got in the car. Before we even set our seat up, it's important that we make a couple of checks just to make sure that the car's safe. First of all, doors. It's a dead simple task. Give them a pull. You can tell whether they're shut properly. If they're not, if you just watch as I open it slightly and not close it properly, they rattle. Interior lights may come on. Another little useful trick as well that I tend to pass on to my pupils is to check the central locking. I'm just going to try it. Doesn't work properly. Okay, so if your door is shut, shuts with a clunk, doesn't rattle, central locking does work. And although the interior light is still on, this will go off after a few seconds. And don't forget, when you turn your ignition on, there's often information on your dashboard that can often tell you whether or not a door's open. It's your responsibility at the end of the day to make sure not just yourself is safe, but everyone in your car and everyone outside of your car as well. So your job as the driver. After we've done the doors, little check that I get people to make is just to check the handbrake or parking brakes on. The extra weight of people in the car, especially me, might be enough if the car's on a hill to get it rolling. So as soon as you get in the car, shut the doors, check your handbrake, and then we're ready to adjust our seat. Okay, so we're going to have a look at getting our car set up, our seat position. The first thing that I always tend to do is I adjust the height of the seat. The reason for this is if you adjust the distance of the pedals or how far forward the seat moves or how far back, if you do that first and then you adjust the height, it upsets where you've been set up. When you adjust the height in most cars, it adjusts up and forwards, not just directly up. So I tend to do the height first. And quite simply, you can operate this in many different ways to adjust the height. Sometimes there's pump levers, sometimes if it's an electric seat it's just a lever that you move up, but in this car you've got to move this handle and sort of hold on to the steering wheel and pull yourself up and forward. Now what we're after, shut the window, I'm getting rained on. What we're after is to get our eye line approximately in the middle of the window. That's ideal. So that affects your view over the top. Your head's not affecting the top. You can see nicely over the steering wheel and you get your optimal view out of the window. So your eye line, remember, should be approximately in the middle of the window, and that looks pretty good from where I'm sat. I'm now going to adjust how close I am or how far away to the pedals. And again, you do this in different ways in your own vehicle, but generally it's some type of lever underneath the seat and you can pull yourself forward. Don't forget, you can hold the steering wheel to pull yourself forward as well. And what we're after is to be able to reach the pedals. Now, I always get my pupils in a manual car to test this with their left leg on the clutch pedal, because that's the furthest that your feet are going to be extended. In an automatic car, probably the best idea would be to use your accelerator pedal, but make sure that that car's off. So what we're after, I'm going to use my left foot. The proper part of my foot on the pedal as well is the ball of my foot. So my heel's going to be sliding across the floor as I press this pedal, but I'm going to extend my leg all the way forward until it hits the footwell. And that's pretty good. If I was too far away, what would happen is I probably still could push that, but I'm pushing down into my seat and it's too much of a stretch. So when you're in the correct position, there should be a slight bend in your leg without this pressure underneath your seat. If you're too close, obviously you're going to have loads more bend in your leg, so that's not comfortable, and we're all cramped up with the pedals, and it's not a good position to drive. So remember, slight bend in your leg, maybe one forward, slight bend in the leg with not much pressure underneath. Okay, so we've done the height, we've done how close to the pedals we are. Now what I tend to do, I tend to adjust the head restraint. I'll show you the reasons for this in a minute, why I don't do this back part of the seat first of all. So the head restraint is pretty obvious. You adjust your head restraint, literally they generally move up on their own, but to push them down, what you've got to do is actually hold the button and then push over the top. They're quite awkward to actually move, but they're quite simple to set up quite easily. Move it up until the top of it is about on line with the top of your head, and what that then means, if you were in an accident, the back of your head is in line with this main or rigid part, and therefore you're not going to be thrown back too much. It should also be as close to the back of your head as possible. Now the head restraints in this car don't move forward and backwards, but sometimes they do, so make sure you do adjust that, because if you were to have an accident, your then head's going to be thrown back even less. Okay, so we've done the height up and down, we've done the distance to the pedals, we've done the head restraint, and now this back part of the seat. Now this is for comfort generally, but it's also in relation to where we should be with the steering wheel. And this is one thing that I see quite often with certain people driving on the road, and they drive really close. Pretty sure that they do that because they think they're going to get a better view over the bonnet of the car. It doesn't really help. I'll deal with that at another time. But what we're after first of all is this back part of the seat just to be comfortable. Now again, you can operate this in different ways in different vehicles. Find out how your seat operates. Sometimes it's a twisty dial, sometimes you might have posh electric seats. This one, there's a lever where you lean slightly off, you lift the lever up, and then the seat can either fall back or it springs up with you. Now I'm just going to get comfortable. Okay, yeah, feels about right, feels comfortable. But that's not the only thing, and this is why I do this part of the seat last. It also affects where we are with the steering wheel, so the steering wheel might have to be adjusted as well. Let me explain. So I'm comfortable. The correct position should be away from this steering wheel. Quite simply, if you sit back in your seat, you don't reach your shoulders forward, but if you put both arms out over the top of the steering wheel and plonk them on the top of the steering wheel, it should be, and it is, this fleshy part of my hand on top of the wheel. This is the furthest point my arms are going to have to reach because of the rake or the angle of the wheel. So actually when I move my hand back, it creates a slight bend in my arm. And that means I can actually move and use all of this steering wheel without stretching. So that's pretty good. Now, if I wanted to sit a little bit more upright, say if that was my comfortable position, that wouldn't be an issue. So I'd sit maybe a little bit more upright. Doesn't feel comfortable to me, but anyway, that could be your preference. And as you can see now, my hands are a little bit too far over the top of the steering wheel. So all you could simply do is actually move the steering wheel. So if I move the steering wheel further in now, my hands are now pretty good. So that still would be okay. Although it's not comfortable for me, that's still fine. So I'm just going to stick it back to where it was. Okay, don't forget also, another extra point when you're moving your steering wheel, that you try and get your best view of your dials in front of you. These steering wheels on most cars do tend to move up and down as well as in and out. So remember, hands on the top, yeah, that's good. Correct view of my dials, and lock it firmly back into place. Don't ever use this when you're moving as well. So that's our seat done. The last little thing, the most important thing before we even start the car, is to get the seat belt on. Okay, now we've got a seat sorted out and a seat belt on, we can sort our mirrors out. I'm not going to go into big details over setting mirrors up. I've already done a couple of videos on setting mirrors up. I'll put them in the link in the top of the screen. After that, it's a simple process. Always check your handbrakes on, check the car's in neutral, and then we're ready to start. Again, starting process is different in all cars. A lot of them have a button to start, so quite simply in this one, press the clutch, press your start button, and then we're ready to go. Was there anything that you learnt there? Was there anything that you don't do? I'd be surprised if a lot of people don't find that video helpful. Whether they do it or not is a different matter. However, setting your seat up is really important. It's going to enable you to do things in the car that maybe being too close to the steering wheel won't let you do. For example, even steering. You need space, you need to be able to move your hands. And if you sat licking the window, as I call it, doesn't really give you a better view over the bonnet anyway. So try and take those things on board. I hope that this video's helped. Whether or not that you're learning to drive, or whether or not that you've been past many years. Thanks a lot for watching as always. Everyone's support is amazing. I'll always try and get back to comments if you leave one. Cheers.